if we were going to be fair and honest, that like there is a conversation to be had in this country, and this I think shades more into the mental health side of things, or even one could argue the spiritual health, that we have been little by little desensitized to all forms of violence, not just gun violence,
sure,
but like physical violence. One of the things that would go a long way to sort of resolving the issues around the debate, in particular, around gun control in this country, is, as I mentioned, there was a friend I had who had very strong opinions about guns, but had never held one, and then she held one, and she had very different opinions about guns. I think that we do need to have a conversation about mental health and gun safety in this country. But I believe in order for us to have the most measured and reasonable conversation we can have about it requires that we do everything in our power to get rid of as much ignorance around the subject as we can. And I think one of the ways that we could achieve that is, just like there's, well, until we lost it, the Department of Education set national curricula. You were supposed to have, so many hours of history and so many hours of social studies and so many hours of math and so many hours of science. And these are, and again, our education system could definitely use some retooling and some reworking, but in theory, I think that, in your last couple years of high school, I'm talking junior, senior year, that one thing that needs to be in there is the Constitution or constitutional law.
Yes.
But another thing that I think, and it would be an appropriate place, because it is a place where once upon a time we taught basic cooking and home ec, and we taught basic shop skills. I think that it would be a good thing for the country if we had firearms training in your last year of high school.
Like with actual ammunition?
Yes, with actual live ammunition.
Oh.
Listen, it is, and
that's a tricky one.
That's my hot take. Well, guess what? You would have to have law enforcement or ex-military professionals. I mean, you're not just going to give Miss Beasley some targets and 22s and say, go take your kids. No.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've been trying to teach teachers how to shoot
that is not what I'm talking about. Okay. That is not what I'm talking about.
I mean, if it's well managed with actual law enforcement.
I might just edit this whole thing out, because what did I say? You don't let a teacher that doesn't know anything about history teach history. You don't let a teacher that doesn't know anything about social studies teach social studies. You don't let a teacher who doesn't know anything about mathematics or science teach mathematics or science.
Right.
So in this scenario that I'm describing, you're not going to have somebody teaching these kids how to safely handle firearms and responsibly handle firearms, okay, that isn't being conducted by somebody who's had lots of real world and formal training under their belt, okay?
Yeah, okay.
So for just to overcome the initial objection.
Yeah. Okay.
And and of course this takes place over the last semester. So you're not going to teach them how to pick up and safely handle firearms, but you're going to teach them about the history, maybe a little about ballistics, maybe about the role of firearms in history and throughout history. There would be educational components of this, but that when they got out the other side, not only would every high school graduate in this country understand the historical place and the technological place of firearms in human development, they will also understand how to safely handle and operate them and the levels of responsibility. They could also be taught the law about like when is it justifiable and when is it not justifiable to use deadly force, et cetera, et cetera. That like these are sort of foundational like matters of, I mean, technically they could be covered under social studies, or
civics,
or civics. Yeah, exactly. But since those things aren't covered there, and because I believe it is something that requires its own space. Now, for people who are not a fan of guns or have concerns or questions about the Second Amendment or the way it's followed, I would say if you're talking about the Second Amendment with somebody who is a proponent, okay, and who owns multiple firearms, you will have more credibility in your arguments if you actually understand fully what it is that you're arguing about. And when it comes to firearms, until you've actually, I think, had the experience and the understanding to first of all, make sure that the fear of them, okay, fear and respect are two different things, and make sure that the fear of them has been minimized through knowledge and understanding. And that has been replaced with respect, which you can't have without understanding how something or somebody works. And it would make the debate around firearms and firearms legislation far more informed, far more intelligent. And it would also, because, the American citizens, because you graduate high school and now you're going to be 18 and now you can vote, that is a really important thing in this point in time in American history, is to understand Second Amendment and the rules and laws around that as it pertains to the Constitution and your rights as a citizen. And I just think that, bridging that divide between our ignorances, because again, if you live in a rural area, you've been raised with those things since you were knee-high to a grasshopper as a tool that you handled responsibility, all the way to the city kid who bought his first firearm because he played a bunch of Call of Duty. And I know a lot of people, Second Amendment people, get really angry about action movies and video games because of the unrealistic and at times foolish way in which they depict the use and handling of firearms.
Right. Well, I think those things actually promote irresponsible behavior with firearms, like video games. And I see you holding back. So what I'm trying to say is that those video games make it a game. And when you're dealing with life and death and the possibility of ending someone's life with your game, it's a whole other story. And a lot of those kids who do the school shootings were very, very deep into these video games. I'm not saying that it causes that.
Right.
I'm not saying that everyone who plays video games is a potential mass murderer. I'm not saying that. But
it's the old saying. It's like I'm gonna see if we can do this without screwing it up. They say not every gamer is a mass shooter, but every mass shooter is a gamer.
Could be. I haven't heard that.
I just to push back on that perception a little bit, and we'll bring this to close for now because there's bigger conversation there we're gonna stop it when we could be having a much bigger conversation, because these have to end at some point. Is that when it comes to the ages and the demographics of shooters, they're all going to be gamers, and it doesn't have anything to do with the games. It has to do with the fact that, like, if you are a young man in this country from my age or younger, every one of us played those games.
Sure.
So
it's cultural.
So finding a shooter who didn't play those video games is going to be like finding a needle in a haystack. Probably doesn't exist,
Okay,
unless that's that 75-year-old shooter. Chances are he didn't play a lot of Call of Duty.
Right. Well, that's fine. I understand it's a big cultural thing, but what I'm saying is conflating in people's minds this idea that it's fun to shoot people, which is what you're doing in video games. That is a dangerous connection to make. And I think it can only be harmful.
I don't know that. So, as a former gamer, I can speak to this, that shooting people isn't the game. That's not the game. That's the obstacle to achieving the objective. Okay, and there are shooter games, and there are racing games, and there are flying games, and there are always obstacles to reaching the objective. Shooters just have this one-to-one connection with the reality in the way that some fantasy games don't. And so, you in the fantasy games, it's using a sword or an arrow to take out the obstacle between you and your objective. I do think that it would be, if we were going to be fair and honest, that like there is a conversation to be had in this country, and this I think shades more into the mental health side of things, or even one could argue the spiritual health, that we have been little by little desensitized to all forms of violence, not just gun violence,
Sure.
but like physical violence. I don't know if you remember a few years back here, I think it was primarily happening in Chicago, but then it started popping up in a few other places. And luckily it was a very short-lived fad, but it was called the knockout game. And it was largely young men in cities, and the knockout game was to be walking down a street and just randomly swing at some other pedestrian.
Oh my God, are you serious?
And you won the knockout game if you could knock them out in one punch.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What the hell is wrong with people?
Right.
I mean, that's insane.
And
was that like a gang initiation, or was that just a random?
It only happened. It happened like a half a dozen times, and I think it was an elderly gentleman that got pretty severely hurt when it happened, and so law enforcement started kind of look, and it was pretty unconscionable and gross. But it speaks to the idea that we're desensitized to violence, that we have slowly but surely allowed our compassion and our humanity to be eroded.
It's like completely out of fashion for men now to like have empathy or compassion. Like it seems culturally men treat it like as if they're being indoctrinated into homosexuality just to not be an asshole.
Yeah, it's funny when I first started working with them, like, I'm a hugger. Hey man, if we just had an argument, let's talk it out, let's hug it out, right? And it was a thing for a minute, like, oh, you got a hug from the mongrel, like, and yeah, but now it's like I got a hug from mongrel, like,
so it's spread.
It is. Yeah. No. There is. I mean, that's a whole other conversation that we're not going to have time to get into. But just talk about mental health, shootings. Like, listen, we started talking about Second Amendment. Shootings are not committed by women; they're committed by us dudes, right? Mm-hmm. There's the conversation again. I would like to give this more space than it deserves, because this term is going to be triggering for some people, but it has also been overused, and so it's understandable. But the whole concept of toxic masculinity,
I thought that's where you're going.
Yeah, it actually does mean something, and people will use it just to make a dude feel bad for being a dude. But the idea that if a dude is hurting or in a bad place, that his brother can't be a shoulder for him to lean on, give him a hug, pat him on the back, tell him that things are going to be okay, that is like queer or homo or
right.
gay, that's pretty toxic, because every one of us have been there at some point in our lives when we really needed our brothers to lean on. And
that's isolating.
That's for me. Well, yeah, that isolation, and you got to man it up, Junior. Figure it out. Just knuckle up. Like pull your boots on. Figure it out, buddy. Quit being a bitch. Like all that kind of stuff. Like yes, we now whether this comes from society or whether this comes from me internally, we as men do carry a burden to be the strength to be in a position to protect, in a position to assist, in a position to heal, in a position to defend. And all of that comes back to that whole strength thing, right? But that strength thing can get twisted into being cold, being callous, viewing empathy or compassion as a weakness,
Right.
as opposed to looking at, like, if you are an empathetic and compassionate person, that will inform your morals, your beliefs, and should inspire you to step up and defend those who can't defend themselves, to look out for or speak on behalf of the people who don't have a voice or who aren't in the room. Like, no, you don't just, like, in my opinion, real men aren't into kicking down or punching down. Real men are into, like, you're not going after the people who are weak or who are hurting or who are in a bad place or need help.
Right. That's predator behavior.
I mean, you got to be a pretty weak ass beta to look at somebody who has a lower social standing or is going through a mental health situation, or is maybe just they've had it, they can't take anymore, and you want to cut on them and you want to knock them down and you want to demean them or you want to talk shit behind their back. To me, that makes you the weaker of the two, because it takes a profound amount of strength to admit and acknowledge when you bit off more than you could chew. It takes a strength of character and honesty with yourself to be able to say, I can't do this anymore. I need some backup. It takes
right, or I made a wrong choice and I see that now.
And I feel terrible for that choice, and whatever. How do I make amends? A real man is perfectly capable, and frankly will always seek out to make things right with those around them. Because if you don't have your word, if you don't have your integrity, if you don't have your honor, you ain't got shit.
Yep,
and if you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is, and actually step up and say what needs to be said when you're the only person in the room that's willing to say it, then I'm sorry, that's some beta energy in my opinion.
I mean, to me, it's so sad that aspect of strength is so out of fashion now, and like this pseudo strength, this whole false bravado thing, and this go it alone, like, I'm right because what? Because you're you, and because in your head you think that you're right and everybody else is wrong, and you're not going to listen to anybody else's point of view, that's somehow manly.
This is it's right up against something. So there is this. If you're on the left, I guarantee it, you believe with every ounce of your being that you are defending your values against something that you feel is a threat to those values. And if you are on the right, I guarantee you feel that you are a warrior fighting a battle for your values and what you think is a better world. Both sides believe that they're the heroes in the story.
Yeah.
And this is a much bigger thing, but it was, there is somebody did a really good job of sort of like pulling together a lot of imagery and messaging that's going on the right. And you will see a lot of this, like, Viking warrior, crusaders, like
But the Vikings were just marauders. They didn't really
Oh, but
fight
they were
values.
men. But they were men. You know, they were men. They were men.
All they did was take stuff that other people built.
They were. It's the mythologized. There's Sparta, like all this kind of stuff. There is a growing amount of iconography and messaging and memes, in particular on the right, about warriors defending, tradition and
Well, then why did
old
they pick
values.
the Vikings if they're into defending? The Vikings just went out and took other people's stuff and hurt other people.
They were unstoppable. They were warriors. It's not about like the motivations of Vikings. It's about the warrior, the strong warrior going out and fighting,
intimidating people. Yeah. That's the only thing that matters is what you're fighting for.
And this is where we were talking about like visions of masculinity, right? And it has been, I am of the mind that what it is to be a real man is to be someone of honor and integrity whose word actually stands for something.
Yeah.
That a handshake and a look in the eye is as binding as any contract. Okay.
It should be.
That looking out for and defending and protecting whatever, be it children, be it your spouse, be it your siblings, be it the developmentally disabled kid, be it the little queer kid, be it the little Hispanic boy, like whatever it is, that like men are protectors and defenders of the pack, right? And it has been twisted by at least one side in this dynamic, that it is about not defending the vulnerable and the weak. It is about defending ideas. It is about defending beliefs. And these ideas and these beliefs are sort of mythologized, that like, make America great again. We're gonna be that shining beacon that was the 1950s, right? But like the road from point A to point B, that's it's all about the mythology. It's all about the standing by your values.
Completely detached from reality.
And messy. I'm just going to say messy.
Yeah, well, so one thing that I take issue with on that whole right-wing mythology is that they say words that to them have a specific meaning, but they don't define like they say things like family values. Right. So if you believe in family values, how are you supporting people who sleep around on their wives, who, debate back and forth whether it really happened, but a lot of people admit it probably did happen and they don't care, sexually molest children, and
all kinds of moral turpitude,
exactly.
and corruption, and
that's just the family values part. Like if you're looking at like economic activity and people who pass laws that benefit only the richest people in this country and clearly hurt working people. Like, how is that a value that you want to fight to defend? It just, to me, it just makes zero sense.
This is where it gets messy, because now it's like, how do they? We've already talked about it, so I'm comfortable bringing it up again. We talked about that big beautiful bill, okay, which gave, if you're a multimillionaire, you're getting a tax cut more than some people I know make an entire year. But if you're making less than, it was $61,000 a year, your taxes are going to go up. Okay. And here's the thing is that, like, this was Republican politicians' bucket list item. Okay. And it was the billionaires' bucket list item. Okay. But the people who voted for this administration, that was not what they wanted. Okay.
And we tried to tell them that was going to happen, but they didn't want to hear it.
But where are they hearing it? You know, I like, maybe someday they'll sponsor us, but Ground News is one of the places I get my information from. And it's great because it's a news aggregator. It takes one story and it brings all the different reporting from all over the planet in together, and you can see the bias distribution of where it's reported. I have seen multiple cases where the news outlets are reporting on how the big beautiful bill was going to negatively impact working class people. And you see it being covered extensively on centrist and left-leaning news sources.
Right.
But when you get to the right-wing source, they're not telling you anything about what's going on there. And I see the same thing happening. There are things that the right talks about, the right-wing news, but the left will never talk about, and it's sort of shocking. But, you know, it's... well,
that's why I tell people it's so important to get news from a variety of sources.
A variety of sources and
across the political spectrum.
Question, you know, it's like some of the homework we gave, which is like just choosing a particular subject and becoming a bit of a pocket expert on it, just watching your 15 or your 20-minute YouTube videos. Definitely recommend doing that, because then we will start to see, the strings and how they're pulled and what they're connected to. Hey everybody, I want to thank you for watching the video. Please keep in mind that all of these videos are part of a much longer conversation. Recommendation would be to kind of start at the beginning so that you are all up to speed, because we'll say some crazy stuff, and if you don't have the context, you might lose that. But appreciate you guys watching. Please like, subscribe. Let's get this channel to grow so that we can build a positive community that can help heal America.
Yeah.
Love you all.